All right, CIS-332. Here we're actually going to talk about days 14 through 18. Plus we'll go back. We'll go back to 2:15. There was no whiteboard review on that day. We did an exam that day. Okay. And then on 3/8, that would be actually day 14, because after this we got the days off a little bit. So 9 through 12 really should have been 10 through 13. Alright, now we got the logistics out of the way. This was midterm. And so now we want to talk about after spring break, 3/20 through 3/29. 3/27 had no whiteboard work. Okay, so I'm going to briefly review then what we had on the board those days. So we'll do a little bit of these reviews in the next pages. Alright, right after spring break, I said key things. Classroom, you have notes and the things we talk about in the class. Somehow you have to organize your thoughts for those. You have whiteboard reviews, okay? And they were all caught up at spring break, so you could use those to go through the material. Another thing you can do, you should be filling in your outline with the terms. So when you combine those all together, the idea is to learn the material. Not just get the work done, not just get a grade, but actually learn the material. Okay? So we reviewed some things from the midterm. Make sure people are aware of what the analysis is. And you should think about this when you're doing your individual project. What information do you need out of the database, which will then determine what you're going to put in? What does the client want? What do we want to view? Okay? And that can take a lot of work, you know. Analyze, go back up, analyze, make sure you have it. And then in the design, we start looking at our entities, what relationships they have, and we can create entity relationship diagrams. Entities have characteristics which we refer to as attributes. From the entities, we can start thinking about developing our tables. Create the tables and the relationships and testing. And we've been working a little bit on the SQL in terms of requiring those relationships. What are those relationships? One-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. Plus there's other constraints. Implementations where you actually put the database into use. And then you evaluate how well. So we were trying to look at normalization. We already finished entity relationship diagrams. So we talked about general giving at maybe a church. Okay? Or some other nonprofit organization. So we said, you know, what things they keep track of? Name, date, the amount, address, city, state, zip, phone. And we started to look at this, and we said, well, that's not normalized. We're going to have, you know, city, state, zip, if they're in a fairly close proximity, like Mason City. Just think how many times that would repeat, okay? The zip code really determines the city. It depends on, you know, one's functionally dependent upon another anyway. So that would be something we would probably pull out. Okay? So what we did is we started looking at, okay, what things would you pull out of this to better normalize it and make sense? Well, we said we can talk about the family idea, name, address, zip. Then we said maybe their talents, and there could be a relationship here. we didn't actually draw an ER diagram, but you should be thinking about what people give, okay? And that could either be a family ID here, okay? Got a giving ID, date, amount, and who gave it. And then we talked even more, well, the family might be broken into the members of the family, and maybe you use a member ID to keep track of the giving here. And that member ID would be tied to a family ID. Let's look a little. So we did that. We talked about members, information, which family they belong to, and then maybe you would have the giving be the member ID. The kids, okay? So now you kind of get the big view. So we take, to normalize, we take a table and we look at what is really dependent upon what really determines, what determines what, okay? And so this was a good example to get us started on organization. So this is where we had talked about the example I just went over with you, okay? Then we were practicing in our database. We were going to make a faculty table and tie it to a country table, and we did the SQL to do that, okay? Obviously, if you weren't here, you didn't do the SQL, but you could maybe look at another student's. And we said faculty must be tied to a country, and we said it's a one-to-one relationship. One faculty can only represent one country, and one country, according to this, can only be represented by faculty. But does a country have to be represented by faculty? No, because we just have a single line there. All right, moving ahead. Here, okay, we skipped the page, we skipped the day, okay, and just make a note over here. It was, yeah, 327, that would have been day 17, okay. So here, if you want to know, okay, that's where that was a skip, because we just didn't have any whiteboard work, so this is really from 329, okay, which would have been a Wednesday, and this would be day 18. Alright, got that out of the way. Finish up the previous section, or start on section 6. We're going to do an SQL review. We do a little bit of that each day, not a lot, and then students need to be working on their individual projects. They do all have a database for their projects, so they can start making tables and they can start testing. We spent some time, gave them an option to compare in class, compare theirs, and they should do that a lot. They should have different people look at what they're doing, and then eventually they'll have to have people test it. Alright, to finish up what we did here, if you're wondering what this is about, we talked about Federal Trade Commission. They manage Facebook, Google, and so forth, and they allow these people to do things with the data that people push through Facebook, right? They can gather that data and they can put it into their algorithms, and they can monitorize things based on that data. Both groups can do that. It's a whole other topic what those algorithms do, how they affect us in the world, but we're not talking about that. Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Communications monitors ISPs, which is restricted in terms of what it can do with the data going through those ISPs. Well, there's a law that took those restrictions out, took them out, and now the FCC says, well, the FCC, now the restrictions there isn't the same. The legislation changed that. It's not the FCC. The legislation's changed that ISPs can collect all of this data. This creates some interesting situations, which we discussed in class, and I'm not going to go through them all now, but we'll talk about it more before the year's out. A lot more people are using this with their phones to manage their access to the internet. And if you're going to use the internet, it's got to go through an ISP. Okay? So, here we are. We're going to finish up most of the SQL work we have completed. And you need to evaluate where you're at, how well you know how to use that. Okay? We're moving into administration of a database management system. We don't go in depth, but we do the basics. Add users, set them up, so forth, passwords. Okay? And then we're going to do some PHP, and we're going to code so that we can use a browser to perform our SQL. And to do this, we primarily do that by examples. If we get time, we might even do some Python examples. Okay? And then work our way into doing some group work. That is it.